Just for today, everything's okay, everything's okay. Never comes again, another day like yesterday. Just for today, everything's okay, everything's okay.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to do one. This is going to be what we would call kind of clinical, but as a somatic therapist, an attachment-focused EMDR therapist, a therapist trained on the trauma resiliency model, a therapist who uses Eugene Gendlin's focusing techniques and other techniques. One of the things that is not exactly frustrating, but I feel like it takes clients time and money. And I don't have any investment in spending 2 sessions providing psychoeducation about somatic therapy and about the skill set that you can use and that you can develop that really levels up the effectiveness of your EMDR therapy or your attachment focus EMDR therapy. And so there's a certain background. I've put a lot of that information on my website, but I thought, it'd be good to do a podcast episode on what somatic therapy is, what EMDR, attachment focus EMDR, Eugene Gendlin's focusing, the trauma resiliency model, and the skills that are involved and how that's different from just basically meditating and grounding, et cetera, to provide you guys with some idea of how to approach somatic therapy, why it exists, and what you can do to really benefit from it. So first of all, somatic therapy was developed, in my opinion. Eugene Gendlin was one of the very first, and he sort of disappeared from the landscape. I think it's unfair. He developed something called focusing, in which you literally become very intimately aware. You calm yourself, you breathe, you quiet. And then rather than trying to change how you feel or focusing on your thoughts or even focusing on your emotions, you just notice what your body's doing. So for example, if you tend to get into situations and you have this pit in your stomach, instead of going to therapy and be like, I don't know why I have this, and I try to breathe and meditate, I want it to go away, you actually establish a dialogue with the pit in your stomach. You sort of accept it. You remain present with it. You send some messages internally that, hey, I'm here and I'm listening and I'm really interested in what you're experiencing. And this is remarkably effective. This kind of somatic or physical connection to your body underlies all EMDR, trauma resiliency model, all somatic therapy. So this is why I believe Eugene Gendlin should be credited as sort of like one of the fathers or one of the founders of somatic therapy. But essentially, somatic therapy, in my opinion, is a bit more, it can sound woo-woo, but it's a bit more scientific, because it takes very seriously how your brain and your nervous system and your body relate to or generate difficult experiences or emotions or cognitive responses. And so it's a bit more holistic, it's a bit more scientific. This is not to disparage any other modality, but essentially somatic therapists take people's bodies very seriously. And the reason I'm really a big fan of somatic therapy is because in my own experience, I found that there were some responses or states of being that were so deeply unconsciously anchored in that it didn't matter that I changed my perspective. It didn't matter that I thought something differently or even that I had a different attitude. My body did things in response to specific triggers that made it very difficult to deal with normal situations. There was a period of time that I sort of realized that my ability to get through even like a 4-hour work day, if I was in an office or around other people, or to even sit in a meeting for 2 hours, burned through such an enormous amount of energy managing fight or flight responses the entire time, that it wasn't that I was an unsuccessful person. I mean, I was essentially, but I wasn't inherently unsuccessful. I was just having to do an enormous amount of work to manage what my body was doing. And I didn't successfully solve that until I started interacting with somatic therapy and was introduced to the trauma resiliency model. Okay, so I'm gonna periodically stop because I didn't organize this episode, and so I'm just sort of like dumping what I know. And so I'm going to periodically stop and sort of like make a point and make sure that there's a bullet head, right? So somatic therapy tends to be more scientific, tends to incorporate latest research from people like Bessel van der Kolk, Peter Levine with somatic experiencing therapy. It was a big part of my learning of what the body is and what fight or flight is and what we're seeing when people are traumatized, and sort of normalizing that instead of being freaked out by it, and sort of just having aha moments of like, oh my God, like that's what my body does. That's what's happening. I'm not losing my mind. Francine Shapiro, who I don't know if I would say invented EMDR, but discovered that bilateral stimulation is a very powerful lever by which you can process trauma, anxiety, depression. It's being refined and perfected now to treat addiction, complex trauma, eating disorders. So anything that's sort of anchored in trauma or anchored in how the brain and body unconsciously, stubbornly uses childhood coping mechanisms, it's being used to treat these things that people couldn't get at with talk therapy. And again, this is not to disparage talk therapy. Talk therapy can be incredibly powerful, but there are things that any modality is not appropriate for. So somatic therapy is about the body, developing a very conscious, very aware presence and connection to the body. And rather than pathologizing or judging or attempting to make things go away, learning to relax and accept and to learn from what the body's telling us. So again, there's Eugene Gendlin, who invented the skill called focusing, which is the most gentle, deeply intuitive connection to the body of just identifying what is this place that feels unpleasant or difficult, or maybe something that's pleasant, and establishing a relationship internally with it. And then bringing kindness and nurturing and acceptance and listening. And in focusing, you don't just listen like, okay, I'm here, but you literally wait and see, do images or emotions suggest themselves? Do thoughts bubble up? Is there a sense? And during sessions, I will hear people say stuff like, once they really get tuned in, suddenly they'll be like, I didn't realize it, but it's this feeling that I don't like this person and I want them away from me. And so that your body will talk to you. It's not in some woo-woo way. It's trying to tell you things, right? So becoming a good somatic client is learning to listen to your body, which is a way of saying listening to deep, deep unconscious states of being that are difficult to get at. So you start there, and I wanted to add my own perspective to focusing and to somatic therapy. There are scientific facts that I like to incorporate in my own way of thinking about it. One of these facts is that there is more non-human DNA, biological material in your body. Well, I shouldn't say biological material, more DNA, non-human DNA in your body than there is human DNA. And the reason for that is because all of the bacteria that are integral to your gut biome, and some bacteria is not good, but a lot of bacteria has incorporated itself. And there is very strong data. In fact, this is an accepted scientific fact at this point, that these bacteria communicate with your brain and they alter your emotions. There's a strong connection between feeling calm and the state of your gut biome. There's a strong connection between depression and anxiety and your gut biome, and PTSD and your gut biome. We know for a fact, for example, that the unhealthy bacteria Candida, when your gut is overwhelmed with Candida, Candida loves sugar. And it will send chemical messages to your brain, and you will find yourself craving sugar. And you think, oh man, I have a problem. It's not your gut biome, the bacteria in your gut are convincing you to eat sugar because they want sugar. And so you take these kinds of facts, and you take these facts that, that the cells in your liver are their own little living things, and the cells in your heart is its own little living thing. And the new scientific data that your heart has neuron-like cells that send as many messages up to your brain as your brain sends to your heart. So this old, perception that it's like, oh, it's in your heart, your heart is what directs you. And then we started, as modern Western humans are like, oh, it's all the brain, it's all the brain. No, actually, they were right. The heart has a huge impact on how you respond to things and is directing messages to your brain. There is an approach called heart math, which is really effective, in which they took veterans with PTSD. And when you're in chronic fight or flight, your body is just like firing and your heart's pounding, and you feel overactivated by these memories, or even by this state. You don't even have to have a conscious memory. Your body's just in this state chronically. And they put sensors on them, and they have a monitor on their screen where they can actually watch their heartbeat. And they can just sit there and do breathing exercises and imagine their heart slowing. And their heart will start sending messages up to the brain. Oh, I think we are okay. We are going more slowly. And the brain will go, oh, you're telling me that everything's okay. And the brain will go, yes, everything is okay. We can turn off the fight or flight centers, and we can calm down the amygdala, and it will send calming messages to the heart. And suddenly, instead of being in this feedback loop of like, oh, I feel anxious. Oh, that's terrible. Now I'm reacting to my anxiety with more anxiety. Oh, now I'm in a panic attack. Instead of having a feedback loop that drags you into a negative state or an uncomfortable state, you have a feedback loop that begins ushering you into a calm state. So there's a lot more to it than that. But the brilliance of focusing by Eugene Gendlin is that it was the first sort of clinical, concrete practice of truly acknowledging that I am an ecosystem. It's not I am an ecosystem, right? We are an ecosystem. I'm full of bacteria. I'm full of viruses. I'm full of cells that have their own individual life force and their own individual desire to thrive. And some of those become cancer cells and are like, screw the rest of you. I just want to multiply and multiply and multiply. They love sugar, by the way, because they have short, fast lifespans. So we are an ecosystem, right? So this is my addition and my making sense of the thing. You are an ecosystem. And this is where Gendlin, establishing a kind, loving, parenting presence with parts of your body that are having a difficult time, is a brilliant way of approaching this. But all somatic therapy, EMDR, trauma resiliency model, meditating, grounding, all of these things that lots of therapists do now to treat trauma and depression and anxiety, is essentially grounded in this fundamental truth that you are an ecosystem. And you having a cruel, demanding, abusive relationship to yourself means that you are abusive to little life forms that aren't actually you. And they respond the way an abused animal would respond: angrily, antagonistically, aggressively, with great fear, with shutting down, with not operating well. It's a really, really smart thing to relate to your body as if it's a puppy dog. And if you were abused as a child, it's a really smart thing to relate to your body as if it were an abused puppy dog. The image I like to offer my clients a lot is, clients who come in really frustrated, they just had it, and they're so angry at their nervous system and angry at their body. They're angry at themselves. Why can't I function like other people? Why can't I get through a workday? Why do I have these massive fear responses when my boss just offers me feedback and other people are okay, but I spin out and I can't handle it? And I know that I should be smarter and better, and I'm not going to succeed if that's the truth. And they're angry at their bodies. And then we have to have this conversation. Your body doesn't belong to you. You inhabit it, you rely on it, but it is an ecosystem with tons of organisms that you do not own, but you have been given dominion, care, and dominion over. And let's say you were given the care of a puppy dog that had been beaten for the first 2 years of its life and just treated cruelly and neglected and mocked and kicked and rocks thrown at it and tied up. And you inherited this puppy dog. You didn't do it to it, but you inherited this puppy dog. And it instantly sprints under your house and hides there in the dark and the cold. Would you grab a leash and crawl under there and crank it around its neck and drag it out and be, damn it, like you're screwing up my life? Like, get out here and frickin' eat and go for a walk with me. Would you do that? Maybe. If you would, you're a jackass. No, you wouldn't. Unless you're a psychopath, nobody would do that. Nobody. Well, why would you do that to your body? I understand that you're really, really struggling, and I understand that your body is getting in your way. Your nervous system is getting in your way. I understand that. Like, when I say understand that, I spent 3 decades in it. It destroyed my life. It destroyed any ability for me to accomplish anything. I hit 40 and had barely accomplished anything in my life. So trust me when I tell you, I understand the rage and the frustration that you're alone with this thing and nobody else understands, and they call you lazy, or they say you're just too in your head, but they don't understand what your body is doing and the amount of energy that you have to spend just to manage your nervous system, to make it appropriate so that you don't get thrown in jail or that you don't end up feeling suicidal, that you fight through it to be able to focus on a task and blah, blah, blah. They don't know. And so I understand your rage and frustration and hopelessness and despair. And I'm also telling you, you better understand that your body doesn't belong to you. It's an ecosystem. It's a living organism that you inhabit. And I'm not getting into the metaphysics. I'm not making a statement, but I'm just telling you, your gut biome is bacteria. Your cells are all their own little life forces that have DNA have been coded to, like, I do this thing and I participate in the system. But if you're angry and antagonistic, you are not going to get good outcomes. You are literally continuing the abuse against this ecosystem that it already survived under, and it's not going to get better. So that's the brilliance of Eugene Gendlin's system and the trauma resiliency model and somatic therapy. Is I'm saying it the way I'm saying it, talking about the ecosystem and talking about relating to it like it's a puppy dog. But trust me, when you get into family systems, like all of these modern sort of like system-oriented, attachment-oriented, you're like, when you think about one of the things that sounds the most woo-woo, like, everyone has a traumatized child inside and you need to go in and care for it. And, sometimes you just want to be like, what in the hell are you talking about? This just sounds like bullshit. Now I'm giving you the scientific evidence that that woo-woo is legit, Maybe it doesn't work for you to think of it that way. If someone had told me to do that the first 5 years or 8 years of my therapy, I would have been like, go fuck yourself. That sounds like bullshit. It is just an idea and a way of approaching it. But that idea and way of approaching it is attempting to bring you into an intimate, vulnerable connection to your ecosystem, and for you to become the loving, nurturing, firm parent who parents your ecosystem in a way that it can heal from what happened to it. And there is no other way. There is no other way. You're not going to be okay by being demanding or angry or critical. Your ecosystem already went through that, and the outcomes were not good, right? So all of these things where therapy and psychology is starting to get this right, we're all kind of trying to do the same thing. We're finding an angle to get you to begin developing an intimate, loving, parenting relationship with calm, loving authority and awareness and presence that's there most of the day, so that your ecosystem feels heard. And if you do that consistently over time, it will start responding with thriving and feeling of joy, and the gut bacteria in your, the bacteria in your gut will shift, and the healthier bacteria will start taking over, and you'll feel like eating healthier, and you will engage healthier habits without having to discipline yourself and force yourself to do it. This is the beauty of somatic therapy. One of the things I've said over and over and over is one of the struggles with maybe cognitive approaches or behavioral approaches or talk approaches is that sometimes it's just left brain. I'm intellectual. I'm smart enough to recognize that this is the right direction to go, and I can force myself to do it. But people fail over and over and over because discipline is in short supply for everyone. And if your body does not shift and you don't start craving and desiring these healthy behaviors, you're going to get worn down. You're already tired. You're already struggling with chronic PTSD. Now you have to add, so you have to use all your discipline to maintain your behaviors and your tone and your body language and how you interact and maintain your focus in the face of this inner intensity. And you have to add more discipline on top of that. People fail over and over and over. And then they come into my office and they're like, I feel like I'm fucked. Like, people become suicidal, not because they want to die, but because they've struggled their entire lives. And they're just like, I don't know what else to do. Like, what else am I supposed to do? Nobody else understands what I'm experiencing. Maybe I am just a lazy idiot. Maybe everybody struggles like this and I'm just weak. Nope. A lot of people are not experiencing what you're experiencing. And you need to change your relationship to your ecosystem, to this puppy dog. And somatic therapy, Eugene Gendlin's focusing, excuse me, EMDR, attachment focus EMDR, attachment therapy, family systems, heart math. I know I'm leaving some out. I apologize. All of these are attempting to get leverage on the same thing, get you to have an intimate, vulnerable, present awareness of your body, and to begin allowing the body to heal in a way that it starts generating a desire to exercise, a desire to talk to other people, that you start being in a state in which your nervous system allows you to work an 8-hour day or a 12-hour day if you want to, because you feel passion and curiosity, instead of just like, I need to do this. I need to, like, if I can't get through this day, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. Well, you can't do that your entire life. It will wear you out. So that's what the basic foundation of somatic therapy is. Look up Peter Levine and read Waking the Tiger. Get Francine Shapiro's book. Laurel Parnell has a bunch of books on attachment focus EMDR. Read those. Get Eugene Gendlin's book, Focusing. It's just a thin little thing. It's one of the most beautiful approaches to somatic therapy ever. So that's the foundation. Then you get into the specifics, and I won't go into everything, but because I am a big believer in attachment focused therapy, EMDR, attachment focused EMDR therapy developed by Laurel Purnell, I'll talk about that and I'll share with you the skills and the things that you need. If you wanted to save yourself time and money and be ready for this to really change things for you, the people for whom EMDR or attachment focused EMDR therapy don't really work are people who are so severely dissociated that they're not capable of being aware of their bodies. It doesn't mean that you can't do that therapy, but it means you need a skilled therapist who recognizes it's not time to start EMDR. You're just going to sit there. You're so detached that I can get your eyes moving and start processing with you. It's not going to do anything. People with extreme suppression and extreme detachment, it's just going to waste their time and money. So a skilled therapist is going to spend 6 months doing nothing but grounding and introducing them to their body, introducing them to, what do you feel? I remember this. When I started, there was probably 3 to 5 years. As I was talking, I was extremely intellectual, extremely verbal. As I was talking, sometimes my therapist would interrupt and say, let's slow it down. And like, what are you feeling? I don't know. What do you mean? In your body, what are you feeling? I feel fine. Really? You're talking about this thing that inspires rage or anger or deep grief, like, and you've nothing? Like when I ask you, yeah, I feel okay. That just means that this is a person who had to survive by completely detaching from their body and their body's experiences. They have to live in their head, or they have to live in whatever, they have to live dissociated. So there are people for whom that connection is not there yet, and a skilled therapist is going to have to work with them. With attachment focused EMDR, and maybe it should be called developmental, whatever. It's not my business. It's not my protocol. But essentially, with EMDR, which is very effective, therapists would sometimes notice that people would sometimes go down a rabbit hole. EMDR is the use of eye movements to stimulate right and left hemisphere, to activate the corpus callosum, and to essentially, theoretically, we're imitating rapid eye movement, which is when the brain processes information while you're asleep. So we're imitating rapid eye movement to encourage the brain to process the experience. And so we'll invite people to go to a target memory that they struggle with, and then we use eye movements to process the experience and to help people get a deeper processing of that, where people adaptively reorient and heal rather than just revisiting it over and over and over with a flashback. But therapists would notice that sometimes people would become completely suicidal, or they would have a massive flashback, flood with cortisol, completely dissociate in session, and eye movements don't, like, you can't process anything. The person is completely blown. So with attachment focus and a lot of other more recent approaches with EMDR, therapists recognize two things. One, that a lot of these rabbit holes go back to severe childhood trauma, in which there were severe attachment wounds because it was adults, it was parents abusing children. And so it wasn't just that it was traumatizing, but it was traumatizing in the most significant and the deepest way, in which the person that you loved most, who represented power and almost godlike power and the universe, and represented how you were going to relate to the human race, your parents, were actually violating and rupturing your attachment to them over and over and over. So you have this deep attachment wound in which your trauma is inextricably woven. And so attachment focused EMDR recognizes that we need to go back with resources. And what a resource means is, can I visualize? Can I at least imagine? It doesn't have to be real. It doesn't have to be a real person. Can I imagine a loving mother or a loving father, a protective father? So attachment focus EMDR posits at the beginning these sort of standard, what is a nurturing mother like? What is a protecting, loving father like? What is a wise older uncle? What is a wise guide? These sort of archetypal attachment needs. And we imagine them and we describe them and we look for examples in film, TV, cartoons. It does not matter, because somatic therapy relies on one scientific fact very deeply, and that is that the emotional brain, the midbrain, the fight or flight system, the emotional response system, doesn't know the difference between what you imagine and what you experience. And if you don't think that's true, what is a flashback? A flashback is someone whose total brain and body is responding as if they're being raped again, as if they're being beaten again, as if they just saw their buddy blown to pieces by an IED again. Everything in their system is literally generating this experience that is as true as the moment it happened. Anybody who's had a flashback knows that that's the problem with it. You can be sitting in a meeting and literally have the same experience and have the same intensity of a need to get up and run and scream or yell, help, please stop, or whatever it is, or to fight and kill. And you're having this experience exactly as it was then. You'd better believe that the emotional brain can't differentiate between what you imagine and what you experience, because that's what a flashback is. But what we're doing is leveraging that to create a resource in which you viscerally imagine a nurturing mother. And you're going to spend time with your therapist talking about that and developing it. At the beginning, a lot of people, I can ask them, well, what do you think a nurturing mother would be like? Probably kind and loving and nice and calm. That's good. That's a great start. But that's the emotional, that's too conceptual and too vague. You're not going to have a visceral experience. What is a nurturing mother like? We almost need to write scenes. What is a nurturing mother like? Well, I imagine, that one time I was in elementary school and over and over, my mother didn't show up because she was drunk and she would forget to pick me up and I would get really scared. Okay, we can't change the past. Just let that be what it is. You suffered it. It was real. We're not going to convince your brain that it wasn't real. We don't want to. It was your life. Let's just let your mother be your mother. And if there's another mother, an archetypal mother or an angel, or Julie Andrews from Sound of Music, like whomever, whatever your brain is willing to allow in, and imagine that she showed up right on time at your elementary school and said, sweetie, I'm so sorry that you ever got left here. That's not right. I'm not going to let that happen ever again. I'm going to show up every time. She picked you up and gave you a big warm hug. And she said, hey, do you want to go to the park after school? Let's do it. And you kind of nod and she takes your hand and you feel the warmth and strength of her hand. And you get in the car and you drive to the park and she watches you play and you climb up the rungs of the slide and you look over to see if she's watching. And unlike your historical mother who would be staggering around drunk, embarrassing herself, there is this nurturing mother watching with a smile on her face. You could see that she's so proud and that she loves to see you. And you climb up to the top and you slide down to the bottom. And she runs over and gives you a big hug. It's like, I'm so proud of you, baby. Okay, that's just one. That's just me as a therapist, just describing once. You will need to develop that skill of your ability to describe that. Now that's generalized. I just made it up, but you need details, concrete details. You need to see how it would look, what it would actually look like in your life, what you actually needed. And the longer you work with your attachment focused EMDR therapist, the more specific and tailored it becomes to your specific thing. Maybe you had a mother who was nurturing, but in a really, really needy, weak way. And you could always feel that actually she needed you more. And you were a really adventurous kid and you just wanted to go out and play and she limited you. Oh, shoot. That very generalized nurturing mother I just described isn't the one that's appropriate for you. Your therapist will need the skill of going, wow, yeah, like, let's imagine your mother is adventurous and outgoing and she sees your personality and she's like, hey, I got you a little miniature mountain bike. Let's go climb. Let's go get up on a mountain. And she lets you fall down and fall over hills and you think it's hilarious and she thinks it's hilarious. We are going to construct scenarios and resources that are specific to what you needed. And then you're going to go visit those memories with that resource deeply anchored and having done eye movements as you brought up the resource. And did you feel it in your body? Did you feel it viscerally? Because if it's only in your head, if it's only in your left hemisphere, it's okay to start there, but your body needs to receive it and begin to, at least at 1%, 2%, experience it as if you are experiencing that now. If I imagine a loving father who gives me a big hug, if my body doesn't kind of go, yeah, and feel it, we're not building something that can create a shift in your basic body state. And then, and because I'm running out of time before my next, I won't go into what eye movements do, what is scientific, what's been tested, what is valid, what is just our theory of why it probably works, right? Because there's parts of it we don't understand. The brain is too complex. But with those resources, you would have done eye movements to strengthen them and anchor them into your body. Then when you go visit those experiences, those things that might have created flashbacks, your brain already has an answer and a resource that goes, maybe that happened to me, but it can be okay. And you will access that trauma. But instead of having a full flashback and feeling totally isolated and totally alone and being like, yeah, I already experienced this. I already know how horrible it is and how lonely it is. You begin to realize, oh, I was just a baby. Of course I felt that way. But now I've offered myself and my therapist has helped offer me this. And this exists in the world. This is available to me. And my brain already kind of understands that it's a thing and my body's willing to receive it. And I go back to that trauma and I begin to see the trauma differently. And I begin to realize, oh, it's okay. I survived it. And I can access nurturing mother figures. I can be a nurturing mother figure. And your therapist is going to go, okay, go with that. And they're going to do eye movements. Are you going to hold tappers that vibrate right, left to stimulate bilateral stimulation, to strengthen and to encourage your, not just your conscious cognitive brain, but your entire body, your entire ecosystem, your gut biome, all of those little cells and molecules that are their own little life forces that go, oh, we're having a different experience and it's good and it's strengthening and it opens me up to love and affection and to be loving and affectionate and strong and to thrive and to be in a state of relaxation and in a state of curiosity and in a state of excitement. This is attachment focused EMDR is not the only protocol that does this. Any somatic therapy and most therapists at this point understand that your body has to naturally inhabit these other states, or you will not be okay. You will continue to have to function out of childhood coping mechanisms. that wear you down sooner or later. So you have this base skill of developing a relationship to your ecosystem with kindness, nurturing, loving parenting to even open up channel of communication between you as a conscious being and that unconscious visceral response or body state that you live in. And then from there, a trauma resiliency model, I'm probably not going to have time to even talk about that. Trauma resiliency model, which which was a huge trauma informed training for me, which is hugely foundational, which doesn't use eye movements, but uses all of the resources and all of the body awareness and body movements to allow your body to reenact and to work through trauma experiences, but with resources and with safety present so that you can have reorienting experiences. Some of those experiences are shaking, trembling violently, or crying, things that the general public would look at and go, oh my God, they're losing their minds. Like, give them a medicate them, shut them down, which actually results in PTSD when you shut down the body's natural reorienting system. Trauma resiliency model provides a beautiful, gentle space for that, right? But that's a skill that you can work on, of building resource after resource. What is my favorite image of nature that my body responds to with relaxation? Don't get too far into guided visualizations. If that works for you, that's great, but it can get too heady. My body, if I imagine those mountains, beautiful sweeping slope with a beautiful single track line looping back and forth, and I can come down on that as I'm saying that, my body is getting a little excited and a little bit more relaxed because that's what works for me. If you work those resources, then with the trauma resiliency model, with a skilled therapist, you're going to access those. And then you're going to visit those memories and experiences that create problems for you, but you're going to do it from a body state that's resourced in which you can heal. So anybody skilled in trauma, TRIM and in attachment focus EMDR is going to go, wow, like you barely, I didn't have time to really go into it, but I just wanted to let you guys know, this is stuff that I try to weave in so that I don't take up people's therapy time. But if you studied on this and read up on this and watched this podcast and like took notes, I can tell you things that you can work that will save you months, if not years, in trauma therapy. It will just make your life way better, make your body way more resilient, make you feel like exercising, make you feel like eating healthy, put you in a better state, give you better relationships. And that is let's review it, right? Bullet points. Developing a conscious, present, intimate, vulnerable, aware relationship to your ecosystem. Maybe through Eugene Gendlin's focusing. Establishing communication and kindness with it, treating it like a scared puppy dog. B, developing resources, knowing that your emotional mind, the midbrain, the mammalian brain, doesn't know the difference between what you imagine and what you experience. That if you need better experiences, start by imagining it and building it and describing it. But don't just do it verbally and intellectually. Do it so that your body starts actually responding as if that's real right now in the moment. And when your body responds, a trauma resiliency model therapist is going to take you through some strengthening of it. An EMDR therapist or an attachment focused EMDR therapist is going to use eye movements or bilateral stimulation to strengthen that resource. And when that therapist feels that you're ready, that it's deeply anchored, they're going to visit some very difficult experiences you've had and then you have a reorienting or a healing experience of that experience, you develop a different relationship to it. It doesn't stop being true. You develop a different relationship to it. And in this way, somatic therapy, if you're doing guided visualizations that are too heady and too spiritual, like too out there, you can encourage dissociation, or you can make yourself more anxious. It's not that those things aren't good. That's its own practice. But if you have a problem with how your body responds to things, to memories, or if you're just chronically in a body state that makes your life very difficult or almost impossible to live, and I was there for a long time, these are tools that you can work on your own. An open, loving, accepting relationship with open communication with your ecosystem, developing resources of nurturing mothers, loving, protective fathers, wise aunt, a wise guide, whatever it was that you missed out on in your attachment experiences, specifically for you, that meet your personality and your needs. Imagining that, building it, writing it, getting the details, create a script, run it in your head until your body starts going, yeah, that would be nice. Okay, good. Let's go with that. Develop that, practice it over and over and over. The brain responds to repetition across time. It doesn't respond to like doing a bunch of it at once. It responds to repetition and consistency. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Forget about it. Do it again. Forget about it. Do it again. Forget about it. Do it again. Practice these resources, and you could literally knock 6 months to a year off of therapy, save yourself thousands and thousands of dollars. And there's no therapist who's like, shoot, John, don't tell them that, because we have more than enough EMDR therapists, trim therapists, like skilled trauma therapists. We always have income. There's way too much suffering in the world. It's not a problem to get new clients. I don't need to take your money and your time to educate you on this. I'm happy to do it if you want me present to explain it, and if you want to ask me questions. But if you can take that, and if you can receive that, and if you can practice that, you can knock months or years off of therapy and save thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in therapy. And by the way, it's just how your brain and body works anyway. Don't go to therapy. Just understand that's how your brain and your body works. It's the only way to approach life. You must inhabit your body. You must accept it. You must work with this ecosystem. Open, loving, present communication and an intimate connection to your body daily, constantly. Resources that fill in the wounds and the things that you lacked in emotional nurturing and attachment experiences that help you reorient. And then if you want to go to therapy, go to therapy. Find a skilled attachment focused EMDR therapist, or an EMDR therapist, or a trauma resiliency model therapist, or heart math, or whatever. They're all trying to leverage the same thing. So I do have to go. I have incoming. I always have more. I could probably talk on that subject for 2 hours or whatever, and go in much more depth what's happening with eye movements or the trauma resiliency model. But I do have to go. But I just wanted to offer you guys that, and to let you know that just by listening to that podcast, you're going to be weeks ahead. And if you really internalize it, if you have questions, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Take care.
Just for today, everything's okay, everything's okay.